Very pleased this morning to hear many of the key messages that come through. Just from the previous speaker, from Roger, there's this need for flexibility, the responsiveness. There's all great and good to create a monthly S&OP plan, but absolutely the need to be able to revise that plan very frequently and often to be able to deal with the effects of the promotions. So then it was a new Rubbermaid, tighter alignment with customers, dynamic forecast management, not all at the volume level, exception-based management. These are such important aspects. Sunoco, the tension between planning and agility, of being able to look at that plan and decide what it is that you would like to do ideally, but being able to respond when the customers really place the orders, because inevitably it's not where you want it, it's not in the quantities that you want it. So these are very important things. And then the black swans with the scenario analysis, the importance of that, the early detection of issues, and the quick response to come back to that. Forward. So I'm going to be talking about continuous and collaborative, and that was a great thing that came through too. Jennifer Huey, National Nutritional Products, brought so much about the importance of that. So did Roger Datilio, talking about the importance of bringing in the demand and supply from your trading partners and making that part of the whole process. So being a software vendor, I felt I needed to actually go out and find evidence from some source that you would trust. But it is what we are hearing in the industry. This is when I go and talk to people, these are the types of things they tell me are the influences that are driving their business within high-tech electronics. So I'm going to go to a single source, McKinsey. And let's face it, when you think about McKinsey, not only are you down at the process, people, and technology, you're way up in strategy, okay? So please bear with me and understand that these are messages that these people are saying. So supply chains within high tech are very much organized as Office Max was. They almost make nothing. A lot of the brand owners make 5% of what they actually sell. The rest of the stuff they buy from other people. So those whole supply chains are designed to hedge against uncertainty. They don't know where the demand is coming from. Do you know that for the iPad, Apple increased capacity by 14% in the last quarter? 14%. Can you imagine ramping up capacity, manufacturing capacity by 14%? And let me tell you, that's at a time when some of the key components are in very, very short supply. That other companies that are competing with them for those components just cannot get a hold of the material. When they have 14-week lead times for some of these materials, 14 weeks is, quite long. Companies can't predict the future. So what are you going to do about it? Okay? They must be able to survive and flourish under any possible future. That word volatile or volatility comes up and up and up. I've heard it expressed by so many people today. And what McKinsey is saying is it makes the traditional planning process, especially around the budgets, obsolete because they're incorrect even before they complete. Scenario planning with trigger events, we've heard that. A woman from Nutritional Products was talking about doing that on a weekly basis. We heard Roger Datilio talking about how they are getting the signals frequently from their customers and suppliers. Zero-based budgeting. Don't assume what you had last week is going to be what you have this week. Rolling forecast, quarterly budgeting. If a budget is being created every quarter, how frequently should you be creating an S&OP plan? Once a month? I don't think so. It has to be more frequent than that, okay? And here's the key point that they come up with. So the fixed annual planning and budgeting processes are antithetical to timely strategy setting and decision making. So the whole theme of this is about the continuity, about doing this continuously, not driven by a calendar. Don't get me wrong, the process is still important to have that cadence going, but you must be able to, at all times, keep your finger on the pulse and be able to bring that into decision-making and respond very rapidly to changes that you see. Now, just some quick characteristics, differences. I actually came from a conference down in San Diego about the biopharmaceutical industry. And there were a number of speakers there that brought out the difference between them and high tech, and I'd just like to reflect on that. On average, in the biopharmaceutical industry, they have 200 days of inventory. I don't know about how many of you, but many companies that I know would be out of business very, very quickly if they had 200 days of inventory, right? I spoke to one guy. They went and wanted to sell into Japan. The Japanese government demanded 2 years of inventory, safety stock. That's what they have to work with. So now they need to be able to plan all around that aspect of it, because these are products that expire. They have too much inventory at the wrong place. That stuff is gone. They have to throw it away. So it's very, very different. If you look at high-tech electronics, on the other hand, they operate with around about 20 days of inventory. That's very, very lean. So very, very different types of organization needs to respond differently. Now, when we talk, on the other hand, about how do we put this all together, so we're talking about continuous and collaborative S&OP. So how do you put it together? So this is maybe where I hold my hand up and say, I am with a software company, but I'm with a software company because I believe technology makes a difference. And we've heard this before. Some of the other speakers were referring to the fact that to be more effective, yes, if you're just starting on your S&OP process, then probably you can focus a lot with Excel spreadsheets and get some of that done. But if you're going to get into the more sophisticated collaboration and very rapid S&OP processes, you need some support. So excuse me, but I say that within the high-tech electronic space, doing it only with process is not enough. And let me explain to you what I see. So this is a commentator on the web and all things technology. He's very sensible. I recommend that all of you go and read some of his stuff. And that is how we use technology is important. It's the process is always more important. The people are always more important, but it's the enabling capabilities that are in the technologies that are important too. So there's the Grand Canyon. And this is an explanation of why I believe technology to be important. So how are you going to cross the Grand Canyon? Say your job is to cross the Grand Canyon. What are you going to do? You can walk. You can find other mechanisms to get across, so that you need to be a rock climber, a horse rider, a cyclist, Evel Knievel, or a helicopter. Now, what's going to get you across that in the best way? Now, best is in inverted commas, because it all determines on what your goal is. If you want to get across that Grand Canyon in the fastest manner, you'd best use the helicopter. If you want to get across in the cheapest manner, you're probably going to walk and rock climb. So it all depends on what your goal is, but ultimately, your technology choice makes a difference. It makes a difference in the skills that you need. I would not want Evel Knievel flying any helicopter that I'm in. If you're trying to get across the Grand Canyon only once, then maybe Evel Knievel is the guy to go with. But if you'd like to repeat that process, you probably need another tool. So this is what I'm getting at. It's not that the process is not important. It's not that the people are not important. But please, the way you use technology is going to make a difference to the process that you put in place, the people that you need to hire, and therefore the results that you achieve. Okay? So let's look at what a more traditional aspect of S&OP, and I did borrow this from one of the analyst companies. I made some changes, but they are there. So we've heard about the traditional demand-supply balancing, the so-called operational S&OP. It's been around for a long time. People are using it very effectively. And then there's the tie-in of what AMR used to call the north-south divide. So that is the tie-in with the finance and the sales function, or the supply chain function, And we can see each of them have competing goals, competing desires, competing ways in which they measure success. Ultimately, if Tom Wallace's perspective is at the top there, the executive S&OP, that is what is driving the entire organization. I do not disagree with that, but what I do think is that there are many other functions that need to be brought in, and this is what I found very interesting in the presentation by Optimum Nutrition, and in fact Office Max. Because they're so highly outsourced, they cannot operate without getting inputs from their customers. They cannot operate without getting inputs from their suppliers. And this is an absolute characteristic of the high-tech electronic space. They are so outsourced that it is very difficult to distinguish the contract manufacturer from their own organization. So they must collaborate. So you see here there's a whole deal of information and a whole deal of people that need to be brought together to the same table to discuss the same issues. So collaboration is absolutely key. So I tried to deal with the speed aspect, and now we're trying to deal with the collaboration aspect. And the other one, I just need to get the names. Keith, no, sorry, it was Andrew Downard of Newell, who came up that S&OP is part of the process. Yes. There's a lot more to this whole process. And I think this is a key aspect of what Tom Wallace brings in. There is executive S&OP. There's also operational S&OP. They are part of a continuum. Okay? So what I find interesting in this diagram is that, and again, it was borrowed from one of the analysts, is you see strategy, business planning, and S&OP. That's a forward arrow. There's nothing going back. There's no feedback loop back up to strategy. It's just push. And then you see these vertical bars. I didn't draw this the original one. You see the vertical bars. To me, that indicates nothing going further down, and they're quite right. And then you see feedback loops going back up into S&OP from execution to tactical planning. So, again, my view is that those things need to change. Why are they all isolated? They need to be brought together. There was a IE group conference in Boston that I attended. There was S&OP in one room. Right next door was financial planning and analysis. You could not go from one room to the other. The people who were speaking were completely separated. To me, that's just nuts. Okay? These things are not separate activities. They are tightly linked. They need to be brought together. But what has happened over years is that we've used different tools with different UIs, different databases at each of these steps of the process. And you get this alphabet soup of applications that you need to install to be able to get the data to move from one location to another, and you end up with a huge lack of visibility. What I believe, and Laura Susuri, who's going to speak later, had a great blog 2 days ago about Enough, I think was the title. Stop calling it S&OP or arguing about whether it's S&OP or integrated business planning or whatever. I absolutely agree with her. That's why I didn't use capital integrated business planning, but lowercase. But I do believe that or planning, and I see so often that this is the objective in the high-tech electronics, is to have all of this integrated, both in time, but also across functions. They need it because of the speed of business. So as I said, Apple's ramped up capacity by 14%. RIM brings a new phone to business, to market every 3 months. They can't plan at the volume level. They have to plan at the SKU level. I've lost my voice. Oh, it's come back again. So much of the specifics of their demand is down at the SKU level. They have to forecast it SKU by customer. They have to. Otherwise, they just don't have a demand that's anywhere close, or demand signal that's anywhere close to useful. But let me tell you a secret. We go around to lots of these high-tech companies. They are struggling to get their forecast above 50%. So what do they do with the other 50%? Are they going to just sit around for another month until the planning cycle comes around to tell them what to do? No. With their margins, they have to be a lot more responsive. With the fact that the consumer requirements are so fickle and it's so much becoming a fashion item, they have to be a lot more responsive. So this is the view we see. It needs to be a holistic environment in which you've got feedback loops at all of these different stages. The fact that you can look at a view, you can analyze the data in a manner that's specific to your role is different from saying that all of that data exists in different systems and is not viewable by other people. So let's separate out how you look at the data versus where the data resides and how you can manipulate it. So the fact that somebody can change a budget, that should immediately blow down to all of the information that's been used at the S&OP level, at the tactical planning, and at the execution layer, so that people can understand what they are working against. So just in summary, if we look at really Henry Ford, and let's face it, he was one of the early technologists in the US, right? He brought in a technology that is to this day making a difference in how we conduct business. Office Max, talking earlier, would they really put their pulp and their paper and pens and all of that on the railroads? What about on donkey carts? I doubt it, right? They are absolutely using technology to make a difference to their process. He talked about tying into the transportation people and tight tie-ins so that they can do load consolidation and all of that type of thing. So the key point is, you know, if you want to continue on an old process, then Henry Ford's description is absolutely correct, right? If you're going to use a horse to do something, to drive a cart, then fine. But if you want an automobile, then you may need to learn to drive. You need to find out where the gas is. You need to find somebody to repair your car. That's a different process. So Laura also wrote a good blog piece probably a year ago, right, where she said focus on the and. And that is very, very important. So and means a lot of things. It's not just sales and operations. That is the topic of today. But it's also finance and operations. It's also volume and mix. So this is where we, you know, in the high tech, what we see so often, they need to look at the short term and the long term. Yes, they are the people who are only interested in the numbers. But we hear, as we go around, of the Lazaridis report, or the Cook report, or the Chambers report. These are people very high in these organizations that want a daily report down at very detailed level, and now they want to say, well, what if? Do we have supply for? On a daily basis, not monthly. They want to do this on a daily basis, and they get these reports, and they grill their people on what is the consequence if I make a change to my business strategy. Are we going to be able to supply that? Do we have the margin to support it? Is the inventory in the right place? Not monthly, daily. So this is the continuous. And then the collaborative is because they are so outsourced, they need to work continuously with their contract manufacturers and their suppliers to be able to, their customers to be able to get that. With that, I say thank you, and I leave some time for some questions and just an eye chart for you to kind of see where we play. Any questions there? One at the back. First of all, I love that word that you use, throw, because that is one of the key areas that I think we need to change. So it isn't about forecasting or the demand side, throw in the demand plan over to supply. Why aren't they working collaboratively? Now, I know you need to have a total available market and a market share analysis and all of that, but why is it only once a month you sit down and think, oh, what's going to be our market share? And why is it that it's only after you've worked out what your market share is that you're going to work out whether you can supply it? Isn't whether or not you can supply it going to determine your market share? So how can you separate it? So, but to answer the direct part of your question, we believe technology should not be the barrier. Okay? So yes, the speed is important. People still need to take time to think about these things. But if it's going to take them 8 hours to run some scenario, to then think, oh, by that time they've thought about something different, now it's going to take them another 8 hours to run another scenario, that is not how we think things should happen. So, we do believe we have the solution to that problem, but, it's up to you guys to decide whether that's correct or not. But fundamentally, whether or not we've got the tool, if we just think of it from a philosophical perspective, I have serious problem with the idea that each of these organizations works separately and then throws the information across to the other one, who then goes and makes a manipulation and throws it back. And it doesn't coincide, and then they throw it back. No, sorry. We've got to get beyond that. That's why the table was in the center with all of the chairs around it. That's a collaborative process, it must be. Tom Wallace has written that one of the best, a great outcome of an effective S&OP process is the collaboration. Okay, now let's take that collaboration to the next step where people can do that very effectively. Okay? Any other questions? Nope. Thank you.